Good morning. You are listening to Baptist for Liberty. I'm your host, Joanna Works, and today is Thursday, July 24th. Today we're going to jump right into reading some historical speeches. My sister has this book, I was reading through it, and it's Speeches That Changed the World. And I'm just going to read a couple of the speeches that mentions in there. It is high time for me to put an end to your sitting in this place, which you have dishonored by your contempt of all virtue, and defiled by your practice of every vice. Ye are a factious crew, and enemies to all good government. Ye are a pack of mercenary wretches, and would like Esau sell your country for a mess of pottage, and like Judas betray your God for a few pieces of money. Is there a single virtue now remaining amongst you? Is there one vice you do not possess? Ye have no more religion than my horse. Gold is your God. Which of you have not bartered your conscience for bribes? Is there a man amongst you that has the least care for the good of the commonwealth? Ye sordid prostitutes, have you not defiled this sacred place, and turned the Lord's temple into a den of thieves by your immoral principles and wicked practices? Ye are grown intolerably odious to the whole nation. You were duped here by the people to get grievances redressed. Are you yourselves become the greatest grievance? Your country therefore calls upon me to cleanse this Aegean stable by putting a final period to your iniquities proceeding in this house, and which, by God's help and the strength he has given me, I am now come to do. I command ye therefore upon the peril of your lives to depart immediately out of this place. Go, get you out, make haste, you venal slaves, be gone. So, take away the shining dauber there, and lock up the doors. In the name of God, go. This speech was given by Oliver Cromwell while dismissing the Rump Parliament in 1653. This was London, England. And wow, what a harsh speech. And, a lot of these are things we might want to say to our own Congress. And it's short, it's to the point, it's a little flowery. I do object to him referring to Parliament, comparing it to the temple of the Lord. Grossly inappropriate. But yes, I suppose that speech probably did change the world. Alright, so who was Oliver Cromwell? Well, according to olivercromwell.org, which is run by the Cromwell Association, Oliver Cromwell was born in Huntington on April 25th, 1599. Since his death as Lord Protector in 1658, his life, ambitions, motives, and actions have been the subject of scholarly investigation and intense, often vitriolic debate. Whatever position is taken on Cromwell, chief of men or brave bad man, his importance as a key figure in one of the most troubled periods of British history is unassailable. So, on issues and analysis, there's a few items here. Cromwell in Ireland, the Protectorate, 1654 Scotland Union, readmission of the Jews, 350th anniversary of Cromwell's death. So we're going to go to the Protectorate. The Protectorate is important in other ways. It was a British non-English regime uniting England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland under a single system of government, and for the first time giving all the component nations seatings in a single new elected British Parliament. It was also the first, and today only, government in this country to be established and to operate under the terms of a detailed written constitution which set out the composition and powers of the government. The Constitution established an assured succession of elected single-chamber parliaments, exercising extensive, though not unlimited, legislative powers, and set up a permanent, largely independent council, exercising extensive, though not unlimited, executive powers. It provided for a large and potent army and navy, and guaranteed extensive religious liberty for most Protestant faiths. The Constitution also appointed a single head of state, who was to act with and to coordinate the work of both Parliament and Council, but who was to exercise only very limited powers alone and in his own right. The head of state was to be called a Lord Protector, not a king, and hence the regime as a whole became known as the Protectorate. The Constitution appointed Oliver Cromwell as head of state for life, and he remained protector until his death in September 1658. Although the office was not hereditary, he was in fact succeeded by his elder surviving son, Richard Cromwell, who served as protector for around 8 months until an army coup in spring 1659 led to his ejection and to the collapse of the Protectorate as a whole. Roughly a year later, in spring 1660, the Stuart monarchy was restored. So the development down to December 1653. The advent of the Protectorate in December 1653 ended a period of constitutional experiment and uncertainty. Since the effective collapse of the king's government early in the Civil War, both executive and legislative functions had in practice been exercised by a parliament almost always in session. Down in 1649, the Long Parliament had run the country, technically acting with and on behalf of the defeated king. Following the trial and execution of Charles I and the abolition of monarchy, the purge remnant or rump of the House of Commons of the Long Parliament had run the country. In April 1653, Oliver Cromwell, Parliament's commander-in-chief, had used the army to end the rule of the rump by ejecting or dissolving it. He acted thus because he and the army had become frustrated by the rump's failure to advance what they believed to be important and urgent reforms in several fields, including justice and the legal process, poverty and social problems, the promotion of godly religion, and the pursuit of a purer, more godly society. Viewing the rump merely as an ad hoc stopgap regime, they had also been urging it to make a long-term constitutional settlement by agreeing the forms and operation, the rules and regulations for the future government of the for the future government of the nation, and then by dissolving itself and making way for the new government. Having dragged its feet over this, too, in spring 1653, the rump pressed ahead with a new constitutional settlement to be contained in a government bill. Cromwell and his senior army colleagues believed the bill to be faulty in some way, to contain provisions which would imperil the parliamentary cause and further inhibit reform, and the rump's refusal to drop or amend its bill precipitated the crisis of April 1653 and led Cromwell to use the army to eject the rump on April 20th. Shying away from naked military rule, Cromwell and the army officers sought a new form of civilian government, and by early July they had established a non-elected body comprising around 140 men who in theory represented England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. But instead of being elected by the people, they were selected by the army and its friends on the basis that they were deemed godly, were sympathetic to reform, and would advance the type of godly reformation which the army was seeking. This body, known variously as the Nominated Assembly, the Barebones Parliament, the Little Parliament, or the Parliament of Saints, first met on July 4th, 1653, when it was opened by Cromwell, acting in his capacity as Lord General of the Army. In a long and excellent speech, he welcomed the Assembly and handed over to it supreme executive and legislative powers over the three nations. The Assembly was seen as a medium-term solution, designed to hold power for around 18 months, giving way to a second nominated assembly for a further year, and then, in the mid-1650s, making way for elections and a return to more traditional parliaments. In practice, the Assembly soon became deeply divided between moderate reformers and a far more radical and active minority who sought to sweep away existing religious and judicial frameworks. Even though nothing had been agreed and established put in their place. By the second week of December, the moderates had had enough, and in a clearly pre-planned move, early on 12th December, they joined in signing a letter resigning their powers back to Cromwell. For the second time in 8 months, the existing government and constitution had collapsed, and in the resulting power vacuum, effective governmental control had reverted to the army and its commander-in-chief, though once again they drew back from direct military rule. It was in these circumstances that the Protectorate was established in mid-December 1653. Alright, so that's a little bit of history there. And I think that's very telling. When you oust any government or power figure or source of authority at all, it creates a vacuum. And you have to have something to put in there. And there's all kinds of people willing and eager to fill in those vacuums. And I think while Cromwell tried to establish a good plan, of course it fell short. And during this time period, while they said that there was a lot more religious freedoms, there were still a lot of Catholics were persecuted. Baptists, I think, enjoyed varying levels of freedom through this turmoil of the English Civil War, and between monarchy and then the various parliaments and the monarchy coming back, Baptists suffered different extremes, and by different hands. If the monarchy was Catholic, then you're being persecuted by Catholics. If the Protestants were in power, then you might be persecuted by the Protestants. And there's a wide range of variables at play when you're in a constant stage of turmoil like that. So, yes, we want change in our government. Today we have a very corrupt Congress. It isn't just the president, it's the Congress, but the Congress is a reflection of the people. We did vote for these people in. So be careful. You want to change, and yes, I do think we actively need to pray for and seek wisdom and guidance to establish good changes, reforms. But don't be so eager to follow out anybody that says change. That was Obama's, what was it called? That was his big plank, was change. Okay? But it wasn't change for the better, now was it? Now, I know most people listening to this, they didn't listen or follow Obama, but I'm just using that as an example. Even if a Republican, even if an avowed conservative, is talking change, well, we don't want change for the sake of change. Let's be specific. What are you going to change? And not just what are you going to change. Because sometimes people go, oh yeah, we're going to change these laws, but what are you going to change it to? And then, actually pay attention to what it is. What are the promises? What's the likelihood of them keeping their promises? What's their track record? Do they have a track record? Alright, just some thoughts. This is funny, what timing. So I go to click on to find something else on Cromwell, maybe from a different perspective, since the website I was just quoting from, it seems to be a very pro-Cromwell website. So before I can start a new Google search, I see this in my news feed. Exclusive, fake, honest, in quotation marks, candidate raises over $70,000 running against Mitch McConnell and Allison Grimes. Alright, so this is just posted. Kentucky, July 23rd, 2014. Gil Fulbright may soon change America. Due to a viral campaign featuring his honest political ads, and those in quotation mark, the entire country will soon know who Gil Fulbright is. People of Kentucky, you deserve complete honesty, so here it is. I don't care about you, says Fulbright in an ad. Fulbright declares that unless you're a lobbyist, don't expect him to work for your best interests. In only 10 short days, Gil Fulbright has raised almost $70,000 from more than 1,000 donors to run for U.S. Senate in Kentucky. In less than 2 weeks, Fulbright's campaign ads have been viewed hundreds of thousands of times on YouTube. However, Fulbright isn't on the ballot. In fact, he's not even real. Fulbright is a satirical politician created by Represent.us, an independent, not-for-profit organization. The organization's advisory board consists of Tea Party leaders, Occupy Wall Street activists, Democratic and Republican strategists, former lobbyists, investment bankers, former Louisiana Governor Buddy Roemer, and a Harvard law professor, and more. Their mission is simple: run a pseudo-candidate against Republican Mitch McConnell and Democrat Allison Grimes in the Kentucky 2014 U.S. Senate race to expose how crony corporatism has overthrown the American political system through the process of lobbying. Democratic, Republican, it doesn't matter. Represent.us cites that about 87% of the donations funding McConnell come from out of state, and Grimes' out-of-state supporters have contributed 75% of her funds. Kentucky's U.S. Senate race between Grimes and McConnell, the Senate's minority leader, is expected to reach a $100 million price tag and become the most expensive Senate race in U.S. history. Fulbright was kind enough to provide BenSwan.com an interview. What are your thoughts on the Constitution? Constitution, that sounds familiar. Whatever it is, it's got some weak name recognition. They should invest in better lobbyists. Grimes and McConnell both accept millions in special interest dollars. You find this unethical? Heck no. Special interest dollars are the lifeblood of American politics. If selling your constituents up the river in order to stay in office and eventually retire to a lucrative lobbying career is wrong, I don't want to be right. What inspired you to run for office? When I heard Kentucky Senate race was on track to cost $100 million, $100 million, making it the most expensive race in U.S. history, only one thought came to mind. Old Gil needs to get a piece of that action. Running for office means a chance to become even richer and more powerful. I'd like to be both of those things. What do you plan to change if elected to the United States Senate? Whatever my financial backers want. I need a tax loophole, done. Competing business nipping at your heels, I'll regulate them back to the Stone Age. Need to bump up your bottom line? I'll send as many federal dollars as you want your way. If you've got money to give, I'll return the favor. My campaign advisors would like me to include a few more patriotic buzzwords in this interview. Jobs, working class, freedom, Eagles. Yep, that should cover it. Are you a Republican or Democrat? Depends on who's buying. Mansur Gidfar, Represent.us Communications Director, answered the following questions concerning the campaign. What's your plan of attack? Now that we have smashed our crowdfunding goal, we're nearly 330% funded with 19 days left. We'll definitely be sending Gil to Kentucky. He'll be running ads, working the press, and making high-profile campaign stop appearances at major political events to make the unprecedented amount of money corrupting our political system a top story. The campaign is already a runaway success on that front. Gil has already generated more than 100 national and local news stories. Highlights here, and it gives a link. And he hasn't even been to Kentucky yet. His campaign will officially launch on August 2nd at Fancy Farm, a major event in Kentucky politics. Do you plan to continue the campaign after the November election? Gil's staying tight-lipped about his future for now. Who knows? If things go well in Kentucky, we might just have to run him for president. I'll share the link in the description of this video. Wow, I mean, it's silly, it's ridiculous, but it makes a lot of points, and it's pretty true. Fake honest. Well, yeah. All politicians are pretty much fake honest candidates. It's just this one is like openly fake. Wow. Alright. You look up Oliver Cromwell. One of the things that pops up is Oliver Cromwell dictator, so I went ahead and clicked on that. And here's one page that I got on that. Ruling England. Foregoing a broad base of support for the new Republican regime proved to be a difficult task for Cromwell, and the Rump Parliament was a chronic disappointment in this regard. A powerful group of nobles known as the Independents refused to be publicly associated with the idea of a republic. Among them in the important parliamentarians Wharton, Say, and Seal. Like Cromwell, Say, Wharton, and Seal thought that England needed some form of monarch power to remain strong. Parliament took an important first step toward unified government on February 24th, 1652, when it passed an act of general pardon and oblivion that unilaterally forgave all of Charles I's supporters and removed them from the threat of prosecution. Cromwell viewed such conciliatory policy as necessary, but in some ways the Rump Parliament proved too conservative for Cromwell's taste. He was particularly impatient with the Rump Parliament's failure allowing religious freedom for all Protestant sects. Quite suddenly, Cromwell put a violent end to the Rump Parliament on April 20th, 1653. In a fiery speech he gave that day, Cromwell insulted many of the MPs and accused them of corruption. He then ordered armed men to clear the members of Parliament out of the chamber. On April 30th, Cromwell announced that the state would now be administered through a 10-man Council of State. This was the first major step toward Cromwell's dictatorship, although in the following weeks he specifically denied that he wished to establish any sort of autocracy. Instead, Cromwell insisted that Parliament had not been dissolved by his authority, but merely suspended until it could behave in a manner more appropriate for the new republic. In its place, Cromwell designed a new parliament made up of 144 men of approved fidelity and honesty. Cromwell monitored the selection of these men very closely, making sure that they shared his political and religious ideals. For the most part, the members of this new parliament was from a lower social status than was usual, lesser gentry like Cromwell himself. The parliament received the nickname Barebones Parliament after the surname of one of its more colorful members, a London leather merchant and Puritan named Praise God Barebones. The Barebones Parliament primarily discussed practical ways in which to rationalize the taxation system. It also debated the elimination of tithes, the portion of income some English subjects were required to give to the church. Parliament legalized civil marriages and debated a proposed unification of England and Scotland. Cromwell soon grew impatient with the Barebones Parliament. This time, however, he was angered by their radicalism rather than by their conservatism. Cromwell disagreed with Parliament's enthusiasm for an ongoing war, fought mainly for trade interests with the Dutch, and he disliked the hostility many members showed toward the landed nobility and greater gentry. Cromwell was further disgusted by the Barebones Parliament's intolerance toward the conservative Presbyterians and by their opinions on the structure and power of the army. The Barebones Parliament was not a nuisance to Cromwell for long, however. In a surprise maneuver in December 1653, 80 of the Barebones Parliament members abruptly resigned their seats, effectively turning power back over to Cromwell. It remains unclear whether or not Cromwell was actually responsible for the resignations. At any rate, Cromwell and his council of officers met to discuss new ways to run the regime. Shortly after gathering, the council passed a resolution creating a 21-member Council of State, and Cromwell was proclaimed England's Lord Protector. The ceremony for Cromwell's installment as Lord Protector took place with little pomp. Nonetheless, Cromwell soon came to wield king-like power and receive almost royal treatment. In fact, in April 1653, Cromwell moved with his wife Elizabeth and his elderly mother to Whitehall Palace, where Charles I had once held court. Cromwell was addressed by English subjects and foreigners alike as Your Highness, and by 1653 his Council of State was known by the name Privy Council, which was the name of the former advisory council of the English kings. Alright, so this has not been a very exhaustive look at Cromwell, or even politics in general, I guess, looking at our fake politician there. But, there's just some seeds for thoughts, hopefully enough, so you can go look it up. I hope this has struck your interest. That's kind of the intentions here. I can't cover everything in absolute details. So we just have to cover a little bit here and there as we can. So I strongly encourage you to look up Oliver Cromwell, look up the English Civil War, look to see what the religious sects of the time were, and how who were important Baptists in England at that time. Now, I tried doing a search to find about Baptists in that time period, but of course most of what I found was Baptist reformers, and Baptist was one of the sects that developed during this time period, or such nonsense. So it's hard to find something on the historical Baptists from this time period, because they just get lumped up with the Protestants. With all that being said, it is time for our Proverbs of the day. Today being the 24th, our proverb is the 24th chapter. Be not thou envious against evil men, neither desire to be with them. For their heart studieth destruction, and their lips talk of mischief. Through wisdom is an house builded, and by understanding it is established, and by knowledge shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. A wise man is strong, yea, a man of knowledge increaseth strength. For by wise counsel thou shalt make thy war, and in multitude of counselors there is safety. Wisdom is too high for a fool, he openeth not his mouth in the gate. He that deviseth to do evil shall be called a mischievous person. The thought of foolishness is sin, and the scorner is an abomination to men. If thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. If thou forbear to deliver them that are drawn unto death, and those that are ready to be slain, if thou sayest, Behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? And he that keepeth thy soul, doth not he know it? And shall not he render to every man according to his works? My son, eat thou honey because it is good, and the honeycomb which is sweet to thy taste. So shall the knowledge of wisdom be unto thy soul. When thou hast found it, then there shall be a reward, and thy expectation shall not be cut off. Lay not wait, O wicked man, against the dwelling of the righteous. Spoil not his resting place. For a just man falleth 7 times, and riseth up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief. Rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth. Lest the Lord see it, and it displeases him, and he turn away his wrath from him. Fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked. For there shall be no reward to the evil man. The candle of the wicked shall be put out. My son, fear thou the Lord and the king, and meddle not with them that are given to change. For their calamity shall rise suddenly, and who knoweth the ruin of them both? These things also belong to the wise. It is not good to have respect of persons in judgment. He that saith unto the wicked, Thou art righteous, him shall the people curse, nations shall abhor him. But to them that rebuke him shall be delight, and a good blessing shall come upon them. Every man shall kiss his lips that giveth a right answer. Prepare thy work without, and make it fit for thyself in the field, and afterwards build thine house. Be not a witness against thy neighbor without cause, and deceive not with thy lips. Say not, I will do so to him as he hath done to me. I will render to the man according to his work. I went by the field of the slothful, and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. And lo, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. Then I saw and considered it well. I looked upon it, and received instruction. Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth, and thy want as an armed man.